is that all of our cert cases?
No, yeah, that's all the cert cases. But
Okay, so we have this item D, 8816, which is fairly unusual. Mr. Harness, do you want to talk about that?
Chair Moore, fellow board, yes, this is a review of a case that was originally a CPC, and then it was transferred over to Internal Affairs because there was the possibility of criminal activity. The investigation was completed, and the file came back to us for our review. It is currently within the review period, but after reviewing the investigative materials, I do not concur with the findings.
Could you please summarize what happened first, so we understand your position?
This is the citizen came in and complained about being suspected that he was run in NCIC without a lawful purpose. The citizen came upon two APD officers having lunch at a restaurant, overheard their conversation. He found their conversation to be disparaging of APD. At one point, when he was leaving the restaurant, one of the APD officers followed him out, and he believed that that person took down his license plate number and then subsequently ran him in NCIC.
Which is illegal, correct? Unless there's a lawful purpose.
Without a lawful purpose,
yes,
officers are not allowed to access that information. So we received the complaint. We did the preliminary investigation. We did the interview with the citizen. Based upon that preliminary investigation and believing that there's a possibility that, because we determined that the access did happen, we determined that there may be a violation of federal code. So we turned it over to Internal Affairs in accordance with the settlement agreement, paragraph 188. When I received the file back, I did not concur with the findings because I don't believe that the investigation was properly conducted in accordance with paragraph 188. There's a duty in this instance for the incident to be reported to the New Mexico State, the New Mexico Department of Public Safety. There's a duty that this case be reported, and they will determine whether or not there is criminal activity. And that criminal activity is to be determined by that agency or the FBI, not by the Internal Affairs Division, which is what occurred in this case. The investigator in this case simply made some phone calls and posed some scenarios and then determined that there was no criminal activity. 188 is very explicit that this must go to the agency that has jurisdiction to make that determination before Internal Affairs can then complete their investigation, and those investigations must be separate. Internal Affairs cannot do a criminal investigation and an administrative investigation, and that's what occurred in this case. So my recommendation is that this go back, that the referral happen to the New Mexico Department of Public Safety for their determination, and then this investigation can be completed.
And I think the agency of appropriate jurisdiction for an NCIC complaint is actually the FBI. It's their responsibility, so that's who it needs to be reported to, and the FBI and the U.S. Attorney can decide if they want to do anything, and if not, then it can come back to Internal Affairs. They can do their investigation, then it comes to you, then it comes back to us.
Well, there's a person whose job it is, a coordinator for this, that works for the Department of Public Safety and is the coordinator for NCIC violations.
Okay.
Chair Moore, my understanding of the process here in New Mexico is that the referral goes to the New Mexico Department of Public Safety, and the New Mexico Department of Public Safety makes the referral to the FBI instead of the agency going directly to the FBI.
Okay. We've seen an awful lot of these lately. This is what, our third, fourth NCIC complaint. We haven't seen any of them prosecuted that I'm aware of, so it's possible that system doesn't work very well.
Which was the other part of our conversation in the case review committee, was exactly that, that there is a pattern of this being treated lightly when in fact it's violating federal law to use that database for personal reasons or any other reason other than a lawful purpose. And so we think that this case should go, the committee felt this case should go forward to the Department of Public Safety, but we should also take a look at the pattern of this and how that is addressed by APD. Perhaps a policy path is one way we could do it. We certainly could. Mr. Harness may have another way he wants to deal with that.
Chair Moore, Board Member Fine, in my memo, I referenced Chief Eden's Special Order 15-21, which is dated March 19th of 2015, which outlines the standards for the use of NCIC and actually points out a couple of examples of misuse and cites the federal code, Title 18, U.S. Codes 641, 1030, 1343, 1951, and 1952. So the information is there. My point is simply that this investigation needs to be referred to the proper entities for the decision to be made whether or not there is criminal activity. And once we have that decision, then the IA, the CPC, can move forward, and then we can make findings. But we can't make findings without that outside agency making the decision, and that's based upon the settlement agreement, paragraph 188.
Okay, so it seems to me that this board isn't even the appropriate place to hear this yet. It needs to go from you back to APD, and it's, you as executive director can decide that you want to kick this back, because if we vote on it now, we've heard it, but it's not done. So I think that you have the authority to decide on your own that you want to send this back because it's incomplete, because of the issue with criminal investigation, and then whatever happens with that process is going to happen, and then it'll come back to you, and then you'll make your findings, and then we'll hear it.
Chair Moore, yes, that's correct. There aren't any findings to be voted on at this point, and I'm just keeping you appraised as to the status of this case.
Okay.
I have a question. How do we correct the systemic problem of them doing that? Like you said, this is the fourth time.
Yes.
And I'm sure it's not going to go away tomorrow. So, I mean, it's not for you. That's just a question I'm throwing out here. I don't want you to answer tonight. I think we can.
I can tell you.
Talk about it.
I can tell you, I've seen departments where somebody was screwing around on NCIC, and the following, like that same afternoon, the FBI showed up and they arrested the officer, and I guarantee you nobody ever did that again.
Well, maybe we've picked the right path. Maybe the FBI can do something about it.
Okay, great, thank you. I saw that there was the 2 paragraphs, matters subject to attorney-client privilege, and I didn't check the rest. We have to have both of them on there every time, or we can't have these. We can't have the executive session. And, I know that means you guys get to eat lunch with us, but it's a problem. All right, so while you do that, Mr. Jackson, I'm going to let's skip you, Ms. Fine, and just talk about the Personnel Subcommittee stuff really briefly. What we talked about in Personnel Subcommittee was the scheduling and protocol for Mr. Harness's annual evaluation. We came up based on the ordinance and the CASA and everything else, some things that we're going to evaluate his performance on. And the next meeting we will have an executive session to discuss those limited personnel matters. And so what's probably going to happen now is y'all are going to get an email from me with the form, and I'll need you to fill it out, email it back to me, and then we'll meet and discuss it in the next meeting. I was going to get your input on this process, but I think that we can't do that now, and I don't want to risk going into executive session when it hasn't been properly noticed. Mr. Jackson.
Yes, Chair Moore, the Open Meetings Act does contain a provision for closing a meeting, provided that it is done through the appropriate process of explaining the basis for the closure, taking a roll call vote after a motion and second. But I don't think that saves the board here, because
I think the notice
the topic
provisions
wasn't adequately noticed.
Yeah, I think the notice. I'm just going to say, from my chair here, the notice provisions are not adequate, so we're just not going to do it. We do still, however, have to have lunch. So let's go ahead and adjourn for lunch at 6:30, and now staff can join us. Thanks.